Good afternoon. It's Thursday, the 4th of December. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Authorities say that it may take years to clean up the major ecological disaster in the southern Arava caused by the bursting of an oil pipeline overnight that sent a massive flow of crude into a desert nature reserve. We get more from IBA's R.A. O'Sullivan.
This is possibly the largest ever environmental disaster in Israel's history, with millions of liters of oil streaming through the desert north of Eilat. At the Avrona Reserve, a river of black crude oil was flowing for many kilometers. 3 women were treated for inhaling hazardous fumes. The oil knew no boundaries and flowed into Jordan, where dozens more were reported hospitalized for breathing difficulties. The disaster occurred during work to alter the pipeline between Ashkelon and Eilat to make way for a new airport. Scores of tankers were sent to the area to suck up the liquid oil before it seeps into earth. But Shaul Goldstein, the Director General of the Nature and Parks Authority, said the damage was forever.
It will be there forever. Not forever, but because the organic materials are evaporating themselves. But it will take dozens of years. Now we have experience with that in other oil spills that we have in Nahal Tzin and elsewhere. And now we're trying to manage the area by, first of all, pumping all the remains of the oil. Second of all, taking out of the soil that was damaged and with the dirt, take it away from there and bring some new soil from healthy places.
It sounds like a lot of work.
A lot of work. The last damage about 3 years ago took us about 30 million shekels to do the first step of rehabilitation. And this will be at least this sum.
Oil was gushing out of the pipe for about 90 minutes before workers were able to shut the leak. But for the animals and plants, it could be disastrous. You know, in your experience, what is the scale of this sort of natural disaster? Is this one of the largest in Israel's history?
I'm not sure about it.
Okay.
Today, all my experts are going now there to the south, and people were there during the night. We have airplane is photographing the whole area, and I hope until early evening we'll have more details to tell and to evaluate the damage.
No doubt the oil leak has shattered the fragile ecological balance, and once again, man-made disasters threaten Mother Nature. R.A. O'Sullivan for IBA News.
Former Finance Minister Yair Lapid and former Minister of Justice Tzipi Livni took leave of their offices today, 2 days after being fired by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The 4 other Yesh Atid ex-cabinet members also vacated their ministries. During his last day in office, Lapid announced that he will run for prime minister and predicted that Netanyahu will not form the next government. He went on to accuse the premier of launching unnecessary early elections out of self-interest that are against the will of the people. Lapid called Netanyahu disconnected, saying that he is detached from the reality of the average citizen and unaware of what the people need or what troubles them. The Yesh Atid leader also disparaged Netanyahu's term in office, alleging that he walked away from a diplomatic initiative that could have demilitarized Gaza after this summer's war against Hamas, and that he constantly alienated the United States. Lapid also denied that he and Livni attempted a political putsch, as claimed by the prime minister. In her own farewell comments at the Justice Ministry, Livni told staffers that the coming election campaign will be the fight of their lives. She expressed pride over her term in office and the fight against racism and discrimination in Israeli society. She lashed out against Netanyahu last night, saying that the elections won't be about zero VAT for home purchases, but about the replacement of an extremist, provocative, and paranoid government that doesn't know how to fight terrorism while upholding freedom and Zionism. She then accused Netanyahu of inciting sectors of society against the other and failure to balance Zionism with the principles of democracy. Former ministers and coalition partners Lapid and Livni are viewing their abrupt dismissals differently. IBA's Eli Wogelenter discussed the political drama with Times of Israel editor David Horovitz.
There was a very interesting to me contrast in the response to Netanyahu by Tzipi Livni on the one hand and Yair Lapid on the other. In other words, I thought that Livni was basically just, it was like very, very critical, but also a little bit defeated. Whereas Lapid yesterday was certainly not, it was not the tone of somebody who's been, you know, beaten down, right? It was, I'm coming right back at you.
That's his personality also.
But, you know, quite interesting, don't you think? And I think the point that he made about, you know, last time they got us wrong, and we turned out to be the biggest party in the Knesset, you know, by this stage of the Knesset, right? And therefore we're in a much better position now, starting off, than we were in the last elections, and we got 19 seats last time. Now the polls would suggest that he's being, you know, disingenuous or overconfident and so on. But he fought back in a way that Livni didn't. He said, I'm not giving up. I'm not going home. I thought that was interesting. Obviously, there's going to be, you know, quite the battle here. I think that the toying with the fragile concept of the potential conflict between a Jewish Israel and a democratic Israel via the Jewish state bill was unnecessary and potentially quite problematic. And I wonder if I see you're making faces at me, so come back at me by all means. I wonder if that will be utilized against Netanyahu. By the way, this was so important, this legislation. It was incredibly important. It had to be gotten through, except now I'm calling elections, and so it's not going to be gotten through.
But you don't believe that that was the reason why this government fell?
I think this government fell because these people couldn't put aside their narrow differences in the wider good. Now, one of the issues was this, and then there was the Yisrael Hayom legislation, and then there was the VAT zero legislation, and 5 or 6 other things, and acute levels of mistrust. All of those were in the mix.
So we have different versions this week of what took place, who was making deals with the Haredim, Prime Minister Netanyahu's version, Yair Lapid's version. How do we know who's telling the truth?
Yeah, you know what, I suspect that probably there's a scintilla of truth in everybody's.
Do you really believe that Yesh Atid was going to be able to make a partnership with the Haredim? The Haredim were going to do anything to help Lapid on any level for any government, anytime, ever?
Okay, so I don't know, but I'm sure that there. If I had to take bets, there's probably some truth in all of the accounts. In other words, were there people who had certain ties to certain politicians who were sending out certain feelers? I suspect, you know, this is Israeli politics. You don't think these people are recalculating and arithmetizing all the time? Was it going to come to anything? I think it's pretty clear that it wasn't going to come to anything. Are people paranoid about their political futures and see conspiracies even where there are maybe only the most marginal of irrelevant feelers? I think all of those things are possible. It's Israeli politics. It's politics, for goodness sake.
Did this government not achieve any results in the course of this year-and-a-half coalition?
I'm not saying this government didn't achieve anything by any means. In fact, I'm saying, I think I'm speaking for a lot of Israelis who feel, okay, you know, we elected you, you started doing some stuff, and you've basically cut yourselves off before much of what could have been achieved was achieved. One of the things they got through was they got through a law that everybody hates to try and raise the number of ultra-Orthodox men going into the army, right? Everybody hates it. Not always a guarantee that it's actually a good thing, but in this case, you know, the fact that everybody's somewhat unhappy with it, but it got through anyway, you know, actually quite an encouraging little law. You know, tackled not without grace, not without a little bit of sensitivity. In other words, the fact that you had these often conflicting components in government, you know, if they'd been able to get over themselves a little bit longer, that could actually have generated constructive legislation. I know that you disagree with us, and I disagree with you on this, so, well, we need to find some means to compromise and take things forward. They did it on the ultra-Orthodox draft legislation.
The U.S. Congress has approved legislation meant to deepen cooperation with Israel, but fails to grant Israelis visa-free travel rights to the United States. The bill now goes to President Obama to sign into law. The U.S.-Israel Strategic Partnership Act would increase the value of emergency weaponry kept by the U.S. here in the country by $200 million to a total of $1.8 billion. It also promotes closer links between Washington and Jerusalem in energy, water, homeland security, alternative fuel technology, and cybersecurity. IBA's Eli Wogelenter discussed the bill with U.S.-Israel strategic relations expert Dr. Gerald Steinberg.
For the last 6 years, we've had 2 parallel and often contradictory tracks. On the one hand, we've had very close defense cooperation, strategic cooperation, understanding, dealing with the jihadists in Iraq and Syria and other regional issues require American-Israeli close cooperation and very common interests. And part of the Strategic Cooperation Act is to cement those even further, to make them more regular, to avoid disruptions that occasionally happen, like during the Gaza war, other things like that. Also to bring into that issues like visas for Israelis. It's a real hassle for lots of Israelis to go to the United States because of all the new visa requirements. Israel should have been and is now being discussed about being included in waivers that are given automatically to Europeans and others. But so what we're seeing is a strengthening of that element of the Israeli-American relationship.
Investigation continues into the most recent lone wolf terror attack in the Jerusalem area after a Palestinian teenager stabbed two Jewish customers yesterday afternoon at a supermarket in the Mashur Adumim Industrial Park near the West Bank settlement of Ma'ale Adumim. The terror spree ended when the assailant was shot in the leg by an off-duty security guard from the Prime Minister's office who happened to be there. The suspect attempted to flee after being wounded, but a number of customers held him down until the police arrived. Two other Palestinians in the vicinity were arrested on suspicion of involvement in the attack, as was a relative of the suspect in the nearby Arab village of Azariah. And as often happens here, within just 2 hours after the attack, business returned to normal at the grocery store, where Palestinian employees, customers, and the owner, Rami Levy, all expressed their hopes that the attack will not ruin the coexistence that exists in the area. 3 years after Lee Zaytouni was killed in a hit-and-run accident in Tel Aviv, the driver of the car who fled to France to avoid prosecution has been sentenced to 5 years in prison by a Paris court. Cloud Issa Hayat, who was a passenger in a vehicle and also fled the country, has been ordered to spend 15 months in prison for failing to provide assistance to the 25-year-old victim. Neither of the convicted men will be eligible for parole. Their driving licenses will be revoked, and they were also ordered to pay heavy fines to Zaytouni's family members who were in court as the verdicts were handed down. Her former fiancé, Roe Paled, launched an international campaign to bring the two suspects to justice. In recent days, U.S. officials have reported that Iran is carrying out airstrikes against Islamic State forces in neighboring Iraq. After a ministerial-level meeting in Brussels of the U.S.-led coalition against ISIS, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry declined to comment on those reports, but he did say that Washington's policy of working with Iran to defeat the Islamic State has not changed.
Nothing has changed in our fundamental policy of not coordinating our military activity or other activities at this moment with Iranians. We're not doing that. And we are not only not coordinating militarily right now, but there are no plans at this time to coordinate militarily. I think it's self-evident that if Iran is taking on ISIL in some particular place, and it's confined to taking on ISIL, and it has an impact, it's going to be a net effect is positive. But that's not something that we're coordinating. The Iraqis have the overall responsibility for their own ground and air operations, and what they choose to do is up to them.
Jordan's King Abdullah II is in Washington for a working visit where he's expected to discuss strategies to defeat the Islamic State forces. The monarch has already met with House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy and other members of Congress, as well as with leaders from the Senate. Other Middle East issues on the agenda include the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, the crises in Iraq and Syria, and regional efforts to provide humanitarian care to over 2 million refugees from Syria, 600,000 of whom fled to the Hashemite Kingdom. U.S. President Barack Obama is slated to meet with Abdullah at the White House tomorrow. In Yiddish, the word would be ashanda. The scandal that is rocking the Orthodox Jewish community in the United States involves a Washington rabbi who's been indicted for secretly videotaping women at a mikveh ritual bath. This week, the Kesher Israel Synagogue fired Rabbi Barry Freundel, who's been in police custody since October. He's pled not guilty to 6 counts of voyeurism, which is a misdemeanor, after a clock radio with a hidden camera was discovered at the facility. One of the congregants says that she's now trying to find out if she was one of Freundel's victims.
I think it's just scary. It's waiting for a phone call to say whether or not your rabbi videotaped you naked.
Russian television is reporting that one of the nation's leading figure skaters is receiving medical treatment in Israel. 16-year-old Yulia Antipava is ranked 8th in the world with her partner in pairs and reportedly being treated for anorexia here in the country since mid-October.
Russia's Figure Skating Federation said that they will no longer pay the 16-year-old skater Yulia Antipova's treatment in Israel for her anorexia. Antipova is in fact one of the most popular and famous figure skaters in Russia and worldwide. She was diagnosed with this eating disorder just this summer when her weight dropped to as low as 25 kilograms. After her treatment in Israel, however, she gained a little bit of weight, but her father says that she still is very fragile and she still needs to undergo rehabilitation. In the meantime, the director of the Skating Federation said that they have already contributed twice as much for her treatment and as initially agreed, but however they cannot financially support her anymore. He suggested that she could receive treatment in Russia for free. Her father, however, said to media reports that he wasn't very impressed or happy with the treatments in Russia previously. He also said that her doctors in Israel said that she could relapse if she doesn't continue her treatment.
The first several years spent here in Israel are critical for the successful immigration or Aliyah process. The largest English-speaking social media site called Secret Tel Aviv is working to help new immigrants make it here and recently sponsored a networking fair at Dizengoff Center covered by IBA's own not-so-new immigrant, Aryeh O'Sullivan.
Reviving in the Israeli marketplace is a challenge for new immigrants who don't have that old boy network like the natives, but that's changing. This trade fair event, held at the Swank Dizengoff Center in Tel Aviv, is giving immigrant business folk helpful exposure and contacts to help them succeed and thrive.
With Secret Tel Aviv, the motivation is just helping people. So there's a big problem that Olim Hadashim have. There's a figure, something like 70% of Olim Hadashim from English-speaking countries between 20 and 30 leave Israel within 5 years. So there's a lot of effort getting Olim over to Israel, but then not finding a job or not finding friends and loneliness or whatever, they're leaving Israel within 5 years. So Secret Tel Aviv, the goal is to kind of help people settle in Israel, help Olim businesses settle in Israel, help Israelis and Olim integrate so they can reduce that 70% figure and get more of us to stay, basically.
Secret Tel Aviv really helps Olim and mothers who are looking to cook healthy for the family in a new environment to access the tools and the recipes and really the contacts that they need when they come and they just don't have that stuff because they've come from another country.
Dutch immigrant Ken Eric believes his shiatsu can help Israelis.
People are like something with the heart. They're very passionate, but also very quickly to have a temper rising. Lots of influences from the environment, weather, other circumstances, we all know about it. And this can help them unify the body and the mind together, feeling calmer, more to themselves, and have more energy to focus on the things they really would like to spend it on.
Higher tech products were also on display. Yossi Milhem of Venezuela is marketing the Terra Boost, a hands-cleansing dispenser with an attached media platform for advertisements.
Secret Tel Aviv is very helpful so far. They target Olim, and where I come from Venezuela, my other partner is from New York, and the other two are Israelis. They've helped a lot in creating awareness to all the end users, to all the people that use the dispenser, and they gave us this amazing opportunity to be here today in Dizengoff Center and to expose our message to over 40,000 people that come here every single day to Dizengoff Center.
We're always open to projects like this, and when Johnny from Secret Tel Aviv came to us with this pitch, we're very, very much open-minded for it, and we're welcoming people like that and projects like this all the time.
Brothers Joel and Daniel Yakutiel, immigrants from England who served in the IDF, are pushing their outdoor fitness company and are finding inroads among the Sabras.
When we first started, we didn't have any Israeli members. Now over 50% of our members are Israeli, and they all say the same thing. They love coming to our classes because they feel like they're training in an international atmosphere. And even if they can't speak English, they like us speaking English because they learn English.
Natalie Kenfer is mad about food and going out. Her restaurant recommendation website is aimed at tourists.
The difficulties are that we have more competition already on the Israeli scene. We have Haaretz, Time Out, which are all in Hebrew, and people sort of here already feel like they know the industry, whereas people coming on holiday, that's exactly what they want. They have no idea and they want to be told where to go.
Israel is a welcoming country for immigrants, but a tough market to crack. Secret Tel Aviv has already expanded, and there is now a Secret Jerusalem group too. Aryeh O'Sullivan for IBA News.
Turning to sports, in the World Short Course Swimming Championship in Doha, where Gal Nevo reached the final today in the 400-meter individual medley. The final will be shown live on Israel Television Channel 1 at 5:20 this evening. Nevo had the 7th best individual result in the semifinals with a time of 4 minutes, 6 seconds, and 56 hundredths of a second. Nevo expressed happiness over his achievement, which marks his 3rd straight final in a world championship. Turning to soccer, and Iran Zahavi is continuing his hot streak and led Maccabi Tel Aviv in a 3-1 victory over Bnei Sakhnin in Akko last night. The win takes the 2-time defending league champions into 2nd place, just 2 points behind Kiryat Shmona. Zahavi has now scored in 14 consecutive league games dating back to last season. And in other soccer action, Maccabi Haifa jumped up to 4th place with a resounding 4-0 win at Maccabi Netanya.
שובי גיבור, מיטרוביץ', מכבי מניע כדור, כמעט ללא הפרעה, הנה דור מיכה, מוצא את המסדרון, פורט למשקוף, בן בסט, עושה את ה2-1 של מכבי תל אביב.
Nice. Taking now a look at local finance, and the shekel today gained strength against all major foreign currencies, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange also rose across the board. Here's a look at the mid-afternoon numbers. The IBA weather team says we can expect mostly sunny skies tomorrow, accompanied by a slight drop in temperatures. Here's the forecast at home and abroad for the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. I'll be back tomorrow to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. Hope to see you then. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a great evening and shalom from Jerusalem.